Greetings, citizens. Welcome to another week of BlastCast. Of course, once again with me is my bastion of common sense and in desperate need of a PC upgrade, Lightning Dragon. And he's working on that. In fact, he just got off a very long work weekend of chopping wood, and he's sore as hell, but his dream of actually having a working PC is much closer than it was before.
Or at least a PC that will run things consistently without randomly crashing or disconnecting.
Well, having a 9-year-old motherboard and processor you're lucky it lasts as long as it did. So we're gonna, you'll get up to speed and you'll be able to do all the fun things that we've been wanting to do. So,
and then I'll have so many things that I won't know what to do.
Exactly. You'll be buried in fun. A few things before we get into this week's discussion. A couple things is that No Man's Sky has been delayed until August. The developer said that they wanted the extra time to finish something special. There's no particular information about what that is, or maybe they're just meaning that they want the game to be even better or more refined than when they release it. So we'll have to see exactly what that is. And so there's been some people who have been rather pissed off, even issuing death threats to developers, and that's kind of lame.
Which is very uncalled for.
Yeah, very.
I can understand being a little annoyed because, honestly, when you look at regular AAA developers, like 3, 4, even 5 months before release, they feature lock. They don't add anything else. The problem here is, we have a very small studio that's developing this game. It's like their second game of the actual studio, and it's massive in scale. Well, you have to develop different, when you have something on a console, you have to pay to upgrade the console, where if it's a PC exclusive or whatever, you just update things. Like Stellaris, they had like 3 micro patches within the first week of the game to make sure that no one had any crashes or stuff. And the next big patch, which is being tested, is going to help improve the middle game, which is where we usually get to, and like, okay, what do we do now? Because they weren't happy with the middle game, but they're going to work on that. When you have something for a console, it pretty much has to be ready on release, and unfortunately there's a lot of games that are not. So while I personally haven't pre-ordered it or anything, I'm kind of a little bit disappointed that it's going to be late, but on the other side, I would rather see it released with everything that they want and then start working on the next big patch.
Right. We don't need another Ubisoft Assassin's Creed kind of debacle where people are just walking eyes and hair. We don't need that kind of crap. So, when a developer says to the people, we're going to take time, make sure it's done right, it can be frustrating to those who want to play the game, but I guarantee you, it'll be 100 times more frustrating to play something that's broken. So, give them a break. They're being honest with you. Respect that honesty and move on. And the same thing goes with Star Citizen. Yes, there's been delays, and but these things happen. And at least they're telling us about them, and they're dealing with issues as they show up, especially when major changes occur. These things take time to iron out, and so just be patient and just kind of go with the flow. Raging about it isn't going to fix anything. And Elite Dangerous 2.1 Engineers is now live on PC. I have not had a chance to play it yet. I've been basically immersed in Star Citizen, and I'll be honest with you, maybe I had a chance. I've been playing Doom a little bit, but Doom is fantastic. It's definitely a throwback to the original one.
Yeah, I had to yell at him, Jarvis, get off of Doom. We're supposed to be doing the BlastCast.
Yeah, I know. I was just, it's so good. It is so good. I didn't get the season pass. I don't care for the multiplayer. Could give 2 craps about it, but the single player, absolutely just epic, fantastic. It feels like the pacing and speed of the original Doom. Beautiful. And of course, this week we had a major Gaijin Entertainment meltdown for War Thunder. There is a big YouTuber out there who does videos about it, very, very big channel, by factors of thousands of times bigger than this one, called Fly Daily. And this man basically makes videos every day about different planes or scenarios or different challenges related to War Thunder. And he had posted a video.
There's a lot of live streaming as well.
Yeah, live streaming as well. And he posted a video talking about a hack that people were using in realistic a realistic or simulation, however you want to refer to it, mode, where basically people would have all the markers turned on so they could see where everyone was, or if the target was friendly or enemy. See, in realistic mode, it's exactly that. You're not, the only thing you have is a little Mark II eyeball, and you're supposed to know what you're dealing with.
Mark 1 eyeball.
Mark 1 eyeball. Well, maybe Mark II if you're like me and have glasses, then you have to Mark II.
Oh yeah, I guess, you know.
So anyway, so the thing is that what happened was that Gaijin Entertainment came out, and first they told him to take down the video, but he set it to unlisted, but the link was still out there. So Gaijin Entertainment came out and said, well, because of this exploit being now broadcasted, people already kind of knew about it in that community, but they basically said, here's your choice. The community can either go ahead and file DMCAs against Fly Daily, basically try to destroy his channel, or they can go ahead and put all the markers on in realistic, which completely defeats the point of realistic. Instead of fixing a bug or an exploit, the CEO basically came out and told the people that play the game to attack Fly Daily. And because of that, I'm just telling you straightforward, we will not be covering War Thunder anymore. We will not be dealing with it. We were going to do some videos about flight
maneuvers and stuff.
Yeah, maneuvers and simulation, what the difference between an arcade or a flight model or a simulation flight model. We won't be using War Thunder to do that. We'll wait till something else comes out. Because of the fact is that Gaijin Studios has crossed the line.
Yeah, and this isn't just some guy. It is literally the CEO, the guy who owns all of the Gaijin Entertainment. I mean, when we say CEO, that's who we mean, the CEO. And he's like, let's just DMCA a bunch of YouTubers. It's like, you know, they've had some questionable things in the past. You know, we've talked about like the Russian bias and stuff. They even had a thing for sale called the Russian bias that you could buy. I don't remember what it was.
It was an April Fool's joke. It was an April Fool's joke.
Yeah, but still, I mean,
yeah, but
they've always been kind of hit and miss, but now it's just like, no, I mean, this is probably the last time we will ever talk about War Thunder on the channel ever again. It's totally just dead to the world, and
yeah, they've
hundreds, if not thousands, of people have not unsubscribed, but uninstalled the game, and more and more people see these videos talking about this concept, or not this concept, this debacle, and you know, they might still be around as a company, but they're gonna feel it, I think. And unfortunately, a very promising game that is being published by Gaijin called Crossout, which is kind of like Robocraft meets Mad Max. It looks really, really fun, and I actually was going to link Jar as a video that was showing more of the building aspect, but I forgot. But that game, it looks fun. It kind of has that same grindy War Thunder thing, but the people I've said is like, yeah, you know, it's grindy, but without actually playing it, I don't know how grindy it is.
Yeah.
But it's still probably worth a look, because it's not developed by Gaijin.
No, it's just published by them.
Yeah, it's just published by them, but don't spend your money on it. I mean, it may be tempting to get one of the sweet trucks with all the parts, but don't spend your money on it.
Yeah,
take a look.
We have to see how Gaijin handles it. I mean, if Gaijin takes the full reins like they do in War Thunder, and you're dealing with a company that basically is crapping all over its player base, and the people who bring traffic to the game, people like YouTubers, then they don't deserve our attention. But initially, like I said, give it a whirl if you're interested in Crossout. But I wouldn't throw money at it until we figure out exactly what their stance is going to be, or if they're going to be following the Gaijin line. And yeah, we can't support studios, guys, that attack YouTubers. This is a very important thing, because there's so much abuse out there to people who are doing videos and like this channel and whatnot. I haven't been attacked by anyone yet, but given enough time, if the channel grows, I'm sure I will be. So, you know, this kind of crap, we have to stand together as YouTubers. We have to make sure that we watch each other's back and punish the companies who think that they're gods and somehow rule us. They don't. We have thousands and thousands of other games to play. They are not our lords. They are not our masters, and we should go ahead and let them know that very, very, very loudly. Thing that came out on Reddit is that there's a company out there called, this is Star Citizen related from this point on, guys, is Streamline Studios. They're a company that actually has worked on quite a few different games in the past, and I'm going to go ahead and leave a link down below to their portfolio. They've worked on quite a few games, like, you know, Gears of War, Armored Warfare,
Path of Exile, not Path of Exile, Pillars of Eternity, the same acronym.
Yeah, Pillars of Eternity, and things like that. And what they kind of leaked out on their profile is that they are designing the interiors of the vanduul capital ships. So that's kind of interesting.
Which means we can board vanduul ships.
Yes, and I remember it was kind of funny because I remember that CIG had said that they weren't doing the interiors of the vanduul ships because, and a lot of people were like, oh, well, we can't board them then. Now I guess they weren't lying; they just kind of outsourced the interior of the vanduul ships to another company,
which is totally okay.
Yeah, it was just fine. But it was, I guess you can look at it as they were going to surprise people with it. But when the company kind of threw it up on their portfolio, and I'll have a link down below to the picture of, I think it might be a King ship that they were working on. It doesn't show any interiors or anything, but they had this picture linked in there before they took it down. That was linked in the profile that they were working on the interior. So that's kind of cool, guys. So if you didn't think that the vanduul ships will have an interior, it looks like they're going to. And that's awesome. That opens up a whole new possibility of gameplay in the persistent universe and whatnot when we get to that point. Devs have also opened up a discussion about the Vanguard. The Vanguard debate has gotten hotter and hotter and hotter.
Oh, jeez.
They have, I'll leave a link down below for that. It's called Let's Talk About the Vanguard. And they've asked basically 3 different categories. I don't have it open right now, but it was like art and a couple other things like, function and whatnot. And they wanted people to respond to these 3 categories and tell what they were feeling about them. And it's almost universal that people are saying, give us the ship we pledged for. And the other things are like, hey, could you take all the guns off the nose and spread them out a little bit? Because if you ram the nose or the nose gets shot, you lose all your guns and things like that. Some pretty interesting discussions going on about functionalities. Like, hey, could you get rid of the turret, make it automated?
A video you linked me.
I
will. Yeah, I will link this to you after the end of this BlastCast. Yeah, you can throw it in there.
It did a comparison.
It's good.
Yeah, it did a comparison about the what we was pledged in 3D model versus what we have, and laid them out side by side. It really shows you the physical differences and things like that. But a lot of people are saying kind of the same thing. Return the shape, return the functionality, return the purpose of the ship. Take that top turret, that man turret, make it unmanned. Have the guy sitting in the back, okay, give him a chair so he can actually sit, and have him run the turret from that through a camera. And this way, the gun profile of the turret is smaller. The turret can still retract. He says there's no purpose to having a man turret on it anyway. He says when the only other guy you have in the ship is in the back anyway. The end of World War II,
we started phasing out man turrets.
Yeah, I mean the Hornet, Super Hornet's got a 300 camera.
Yeah, so like for 300, 500, 700,000 years in the future, are we going to forget that? 7,000 years ago, we had the right idea. We need to put people inside a very vulnerable and exposed area. Now, Granted, if it was all glass, the glass in, Star Citizen is actually like a transparent aluminum or transparent steel, so it's actually stronger than regular metal. So they technically have more protection. But I mean, what's better, having a layer of super strong glass steel right in front of your face, or having multiple layers of armor and internal parts as well as shields? I mean,
well, you remember the Retaliator?
I'd take sitting in a seat.
The Retaliator.
Yeah, that was the original pitch. They actually had, in the concept art, they had drawn little stations for the guys to sit in. And then when it comes out, it's like, oh, they're manned now. It's like, what? What the fuck happened?
Yeah, originally behind the cockpit, left and the right, they showed chairs that people were sitting in, and the chairs were running the turrets through a camera interface. And, the thing about a camera interface is that you can actually, technically speaking, run all the turrets on one interface, because the guy can sit there and he can turn that camera or whatever cameras are and follow a target, and whatever turrets are able to track in that direction would track with that guy. So you can have like 3 turrets right now that are in that can fire within that arc, and you can see the one guy that the 3 guns would all track to that guy's where he's
shooting. He had like a camera, 360 degree camera in the middle of the ship on a small
top bomb camera
bump
kind of thing,
or whatever that just circled. I mean, you could take the Retaliator's 5-man crew of turret operators and move it down to 2, because you have one for the top and one for the bottom.
Right, and you basically can turn and keep everyone inside and things like that. There's a lot of things that basically when it comes to turrets that they need to look at and really start to think about. Because if they want to reduce the amount of people you need to have, or at least in ships, or they want to increase the amount of ships in an instance and reduce the number of players, or whatever the case is that they need to look at how can turrets be done better. Because when you've got ships with like if it's got 2 turrets, 1 top, 1 bottom, okay, I know that's I can understand that. But even that, look at the constellation. You got a seat on the left, you got a seat on the right, you got a turret on the top, you got a turret in the bottom. Okay.
And then you have the commander's seat in the middle.
Right. So guy on the left runs a turret at the bottom, guy on the right runs a turret in the top, and then when they're not shooting or whatever, they can also run systems, right? I mean, it's just a matter of switching what your functionality is.
The freelancer has 4 seats in the front and a turret at the back.
Right, way back behind the cargo.
It's a smaller ship.
Right, so I mean, same kind of thing. You know, you there's no reason not to automate these things, and it would, it may be a little bit late in development or whatnot, but all they have to do is, maybe that'll be an upgrade that you can do to ships, is basically put automated turrets, or once they're controlled that way, as an upgrade. If that's an upgrade that you can do down the road, fine. But I think that's something that they need to really consider thinking about.
The problem is, that's not something you can really retrofit. I mean, I guess you could kind of, like in the Retaliator's case, technically you could have those top left and right turrets.
Yeah.
You could have one of them controlling the top, one of them controlling the right side, and you could kind of streamline it that way. But there are certain ships that you wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, on the Freelancer, I mean, why would you bother slaving that? It's only got 1 turret.
Well, yeah, but
I can't think of a lot of other ones.
Yeah, but the guy in the passenger seat could run that.
The Redeemer. The Redeemer's got 2-man turrets right now.
Yeah, it's got 2-man turrets, and it's gonna have 2. I said they're gonna add like 2 automated to the rear and a couple guns to the front. That thing is gonna be well overpowering anything.
It's gonna be a gunship.
Oh, it's gonna be ridiculous. So anyway, so I'll have the link down below for us to talk about the Vanguard. Go ahead and drop your feedback into there, and let them know what you're thinking or how you feel about the ship, because there's a lot of pushback right now, and I think when they're almost seeing universally, like, hey guys, we want the ship we pledged for.
Just give us the concept art. Just clean it up a little bit, and you're good to go.
And a lot of people understand that some things had to change, like make the pod work in the belly and things like that. We get that, and that's fine. But some of the stuff is just blatant changes, and just absolutely, totally, just for the most part, killing the spirit of the ship. And then
it's like they got lazy.
Yeah, well, it's like, it was supposed to be a fast fighter, but not a turning fighter. It's like, a lot of power and long range, but it doesn't even have the speed, and it doesn't have the firepower. So what does it do? And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the ship. I still think it has potential, but we'll set to see how it goes. And so I have the torpedo version LTI with all the BUKs. So I figured that the biggest version would probably have a different hull. So that's kind of why I went up. Because the same way I turned my Freelancer Dur into a Freelancer Max, because I figured I could probably always throw more fuel tanks on it, and throw a better sensor package, and boom, then I've got a Max with Dur kind of exploration potential. Could be wrong on that, but once again, you can't just upgrade. You can always turn. I figured you can always turn a Max into Dur functionality, but you could never turn a Dur into a Max, because it gets a whole different frame. So
it's like when you're talking about building engines, there's no substitute for cubic inches. If you have a V8, it's always going to be better than a 4-cylinder because it's got more potential.
Yeah. And of course, 2.4 now is about a month and a half late. As of this evening, 2.4M was released and has various fixes and stability improvements, but I haven't tested it yet because I literally just finished downloading it. It just came out. What I'm going to be doing this evening after I finish all this is... I can't play Doom. No, I'm going to have to go ahead and I'm going to have to jump back in and see if we're still getting those code 0s and those code 7 disconnects. And honestly, as far as everything I've seen so far, the code 7 and the code 0 disconnects are really the only thing that is keeping the game from 2.4 from being ready. The frame rate as of 2.4L was fantastic. I mean, you have some video here in the background. This is 2.4L that you're looking at, and the frame rate is solid. Obviously, there are a couple times you have a little bit of hiccups, but I think that's just the nature sometimes of online gaming. But for the most part, this has been one of the smoothest frame rates or the smoothest consistencies that I've seen pretty much since 2.0 came out. And I'm hoping that 2.4M doesn't mess it up, but I said I haven't had a chance to play it yet, and I will give a report on that. Lightning Dragon and I were talking multiple times, I think when I was at my job, about the...
At least twice.
Well, that's multiple. It's more than one. So So we're talking about the hangar situation, and the flaws that come from. Let's just start with like Port Olisar. Okay, so you have the major port, which you start off in. But let's look at where some of the problems are in Port Olisar. It was just dealing with functionality. You can't repair there, and you can't refuel there. So
it's worse than a truck stop.
It's there's absolutely it's a shopping mall basically. You're parking in a parking lot, and so to speak, and you're shopping for the stuff that's in there. The station, in my opinion, needs to have the refuel and repair abilities there, or at least refuel, and if not repair, just refuel. I think an important
easily refuel.
Yeah, and we were talking about how a long time ago they had promised that you'd be able to visit players' hangars or whatnot, and we were talking about it, and we were thinking about it. There's really a better way to do this. See, Port Olisar, in my opinion, is the kind of station, the cheapest or the lowest end stations you could probably ever see in a full space universe. Imagine, if you will, a much larger space station that all the hangars are behind doors. You're actually, ships just don't get landed on a pad. They're behind a door, like your hangar. Like, imagine everything on the inside looks like.
Picture a box that your ship flies into, aka your hangar.
Self-flying hangars.
But it's built into an actual space station.
Right. And when you're in the station, like you're up top, right? And you spawn in, and you go down, you select your ship, then you'll get into an elevator, okay? And anyone's on your team can join you down into this room. So you summon your ship, you go down, okay? They go down with you, whatever. And now you're in the hangar, and now you can all get into the same ship together. You hit launch, the door opens, you now fly out of the station. Now, why do I think this is a better way to go? It's, for starters, it'll reduce frame rate meltdown on like Port Olisar kind of situation, because if there is like 16 ships out there, for example, okay, well, if they're all inside hangars, your game isn't drawing them. You don't have to worry about that, and your frame rate stays more consistent. Furthermore, it's, I think, a lot more immersive. You go down to a hangar, you get in your ship, the doors open up, and you're looking into space, and then you come straight out. I mean, they already did it with the asteroid hangar a long time ago. For the tutorial, and it was actually found in Arena Commander. Why don't the people with the asteroid hangars have the ability to like have an asteroid outside of like Yella or something, or somewhere in deep space that basically you load in, and if you want to go shopping, then you fly to Port Olisar or whatever. I mean, think how much cooler it would be if we spread out the spawns a little bit. So basically, you're not sitting there on top of each other in one spot, and it will kind of, I think, in my opinion, that would be a much better way to go. And just the idea of being able to invite your friends into your hangar before you start playing, because the hangar is in the persistent universe or whatever, so to speak, once you've chosen the online portion. Think how much cooler that is. I mean, this is how we can share our hangars without having to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, my idea was, what you do is you have an online hangar and you have an offline hangar. And what you do is, when you load into the online hangar, basically it's a 3D lobby. And from there, because right now you can already do things when you go to the elevator, right? You go there, if you want to go to the, what's the ground thing they have now?
Oh, you're talking about the ArcCorp?
Yeah, ArcCorp. You can go to ArcCorp from inside your hangar. You just go to the elevator. Now imagine if you expanded onto that, and let's say you joined your friend's team or whatever. I forget what it is. And then now you have the option of going to their hangar. Well, you just step inside your elevator, and it. I'm sorry, but Mass Effect here, you did the Mass Effect elevator loading screen.
We need elevator music.
See, the nice thing about that, I know people really complained about the loading screens take forever in the Mass Effect thing, and, well, first of all, if you put it on an SSD, they load really fast. And second of all, that's a very immersive loading screen. You're not pulled out of the game. Think about how many times you have to sit there and stare at like a 30-second to 2-minute loading screen. You're just sitting there staring at it, and it's usually have some bullshit information, and you lean back, you stretch your arms out, and you yawn and go, I'll be with you guys in a second after I get out this loading screen.
And I hate that loading screen.
And they want to have immersion.
Yeah, that loading screen helps always something stupid like storing your gun in the front of your crotch is a bad thing to do. You know, something obviously.
Yeah, and Chris Roberts wants immersion, and he wants all this stuff. Well, boom, there you go. You get rid of some of the loading screens in the game, and you can even do this on your hangar side. So basically, what you do is, if all your friends or just yourself get into the ship. And then when you sit down in the cockpit, like the old thing before they had the little simulator box, you sit down in your ship, little pop-up comes up, you know, the ship's kind of, the engines kind of warm up and the computers turn on, and it's like, what do you want to do? And you have the, okay, well, I want to fly single player, or, well, maybe not in the, if you load it in the multiplayer one, but like you want to request permission to take off. And so that puts you in a loading screen where it's shutting down all the other rooms in your hangar if you have multiple loaded, and it's unloading them from the assets, so you're freeing up more memory. Then it starts loading everything around while you have a timer that says, you know, getting permission to dock or to take off, please wait. And while everyone doesn't like waiting, the faster your machine is, the faster your load times will be, which unfortunately is kind of a first world problem. I hate to say this, but I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. But still, it's not breaking the immersion. What would you rather do? Sit and stare at your beautiful ship that's got ridiculously high poly counts, or would you like to sit and stare at a frickin' loading screen? I'm sorry, I'd rather stare at the ship, because at least I could look around while it's doing the loading screen.
Agreed.
And I think that'd be a really great, thing. And also, it can check the instance, like, oh, well, this instance is full, and it automatically switches you to the next server because you're still in a loading screen technically. It just hasn't put up the loading screen wall, because I've had games that were broken or didn't work properly where it didn't pull up the splash screen. I've seen it where it just sits there and it loads all the textures, and it's like you're watching a game being kind of developed in front of you. Like, they have the first pass textures and the second pass textures, and then they have the third pass textures, and it starts loading in like the objects, like buildings and players and stuff. And I've seen that in MMOs. I think it was Guild Wars 2 when
also the Old Republic did it.
Load up
When I was in the alpha, beta test alpha for the Old Republic,
I remember that.
Yeah, the splash screens didn't work at all. You just watch everything start to be drawn in, and it was very interesting. But basically,
so it's not like that technology is like, oh well, what happens behind a loading screen? It buffers all the textures.
Yeah. It's just drawing everything. It's just drawing everything outside the hangar and the door. The doors are closed. You can't see what's beyond it anyway. It's going to go ahead and draw everything in. Boom, you're on the server together. Doors open. You fly out. And what the great thing about this too is that when you're going to come back to a station like this, you dock. Guess what? You don't have to worry about someone ramming your ship. You don't have to worry about somebody stealing your ship. You don't have to. All this stuff is resolved by having closed-off hangars. You don't have to worry about drawing somebody's constellation and 2 freelancers and 5 Vanguards
or a Starfarer, the current biggest ship in the world now.
Right. All that memory, all those graphics are suddenly freed up. All that space, that processing power for your computer, because you created an internal docking space in the game. And I think that's something that they need to consider. Now, I think the idea of having something like Port Olisar is fine. I mean, I said they're kind of like, they look like intergalactic space malls.
If they upgraded it to have like refueling and maybe like food, and
or you're dropping cargo off there or something and things like that.
Yeah, but I think of it like an actual truck stop. I'm trying to think of it. The Flying J. If you live in America, you might know of that.
The 7-Eleven.
Where you have you have a convenience store, you have gas, and there's like showers and there's beds. Because think about it. I mean, a long time ago, didn't people say, the developers, maybe not Chris Roberts himself, that to save the game you'd have to like log out with a bed? So like the exploration ships had beds, and you logged out in the bed. So if you land your small fighter or whatever at these little truck stop stations, you can refuel, you can get out, you can rent a room, you can sleep, and you can save and exit. Now, I mean, I'm going to bring up Fallout 4 here with their survival mode, that basically you couldn't save the game, unless you slept in a bed. Well, Fallout 4 is a single-player game, and if you crash in a single-player game without saving, you're done. On a multiplayer game, they really need to have all those assets saved. So basically, if you crash, you would just load back in right where you were, and you'd have a little warning message, just like, warning, you have fallen asleep at the wheel. Be careful, you might get killed.
That'd be kind of funny, actually. Your character, like,
well, I mean,
he wakes up from a goat faint, it's like, what?
Well, if you think about it, if they kept your ship loaded longer, like let's say an hour, if you didn't properly log off, you have a risk of your ship getting destroyed and you waking up in a medical center, as opposed to if you docked at like the Port Alsar or whatever it is, and they actually have like space defenses, and they have like a police force there that while you're sleeping, they'll defend your ship and all that, and so your ship is safe. And none of us wants to lose our ship, but I mean, if you're talking about trying to make it a living, breathing world that feels real, some of these things, there's a lot of people, myself included, will be like, oh God, hang on, I have to go and land before I can log off. And, it's going to annoy some of us. But, there's still that sense of realism and depth and immersion that I think needs to be in this kind of game. It's a huge, massive game. It's maybe not as wide as No Man's Sky is going to be, but it's probably going to be a lot deeper.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, they patch the crap out of the game.
No, I agree, and that's the thing that if you know you're going to be playing, I mean, the type of session you are is going to determine probably what kind of ship you want to fly. Like if I know that I might be out in space, but I know I might only have in half an hour, 45 minutes or whatever, I might grab my freelancer because it's got a bed and I can log out. If I know I got like hours and hours and hours, and I'm doing something, and I might consider something that doesn't have a bed because I'll have time to finish up and come back. So, I mean, that's definitely something you would want to consider. But anyway, we want to throw that idea out there and talk about that because we think that's kind of where there's a little bit of a flaw right now and how things can be done a little bit better. And we know the game's in development. We know it's alpha. Before anyone puts that in the comments, we're aware. But these are just ideas.
For all we know, they already have that idea and they just have to build it.
Right, exactly. So, but it's one of those things that it's for me putting ideas out there in case maybe they didn't think about it. I mean, we'll just have to see, and we're still waiting to see like the whole pipeline system coming on the ships and things like that. We don't know what kind of changes are still coming down the road. We have a rough idea.
There's still that elusive band-aid ripping off that they're talking about.
Please let it be IM, and please let it be get rid of the. I think what they need to do is they need to get rid of IM. They need to give us a virtual stick for the mouse users that's actually decent, because the virtual stick we have right now in Star Citizen is the worst virtual stick in the history of flight games. A lack of better terminology, it's shaped like a maxi pad. It should be a circle with clear defined borders and a visible dead zone in the center. There's been shown repeatedly across the games, even though Chris Roberts doesn't believe the virtual stick can be as good as an actual stick. There are tons of games out there that prove that to be exactly the opposite, where people
just like the game we won't speak of ever again.
Exactly, that basically the virtual stick there has been shown, statistically speaking, to be within a few percentage points with a proficient player higher than an actual stick if done correctly. And as well, the last thing I think they need to change is they need to get rid of the, as I like to call it, the cruise control throttle, which is basically where you throttle up and it kind of holds the speed, and change it to an acceleration-based throttle. With if they need to have fixed speed limit caps, every ship should be able to reach that, but every ship should have different acceleration, like a potential. So, for example,
which is what I've been saying for the longest time.
Yeah, let's say you move your throttle up to 5%. And then their ship moves its throttle up to 10%. The same type of ship moves its throttle up to 10%. Both will eventually reach maximum speed. One will obviously reach it in half the time, and because it's still constantly, it has a more thrust value. It's space, so you keep applying constant thrust, you keep speeding up. And this is an important factor because when you're dealing with like most sim games or anything with complex flight, what you're dealing with is an acceleration throttle. I mean, look, your car is an acceleration throttle. Okay, if you hold the pedal to a certain thing on a flat surface, it's going at certain pushing in a certain amount of flat surface up to the engine's power or whatnot. Obviously, because you're dealing with with friction and things like that, things you're not going to find in space.
Yeah, friction,
it's going to keep accelerating.
We're going to slow you down.
Yeah, it's going to keep accelerating until it hits that point where it's not going to accelerate anymore. But it's not the difference between that and cruise control, where you just set a speed, and we don't drive around normally on cruise control. You don't do that in cities. You sure as hell wouldn't want to do that in dogfighting. So that changes things. That changes how the game handles how you fly, and so I'm not against the idea of cruise control, but to some degree. I like to on long trips, like if I'm flying a straight line, I just set my throttle to like high or something. But even then, it's like, I guess you could say it's almost a difference between flying coupled and decoupled. I guess you'd almost say, because coupled is like cruise control, decoupled is like more like space, and that's the way I prefer to fly.
Kerbal
sometimes.
Space Program.
Although the only reason I don't fly decoupled right now as currently is because they got their things set up so that the targeting is actually worse when you're flying decoupled for some reason. I don't.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, it's a lot of people have already been discussing that the ESP doesn't work with decoupled mode, which causes problems with targeting. So it's actually less efficient in combat to be flying in decoupled. So, but if decoupled didn't, I mean, if ESP didn't exist at all, the game would be more challenging, and it wouldn't matter what mode you're flying in, and I would just fly decoupled. So basically, yeah, that's some of the things that they're thinking about this week, and some of the things that have kind of happened out there. So, interesting week.
I hate to say it, but we just need a World War II flight sim with strafe options. I'm sorry to say it, but that's what we need. I mean, if you remove the atmospheric drag, and then you add thrusters, obviously because you can go up and down and left and right, which is basically your rudder control. You don't have any of the friction to stop you, and so if you slow down, well, there's not as much speed, so you'd apply braking, and well, obviously you'd have to have retro thrusters, but you slow down. And then more power goes to your thrusters because it's they're not being robbed of energy from the main engines, and then you can perform space maneuvers, or you can fly like a World War II fighter. That's where your boom and zoom comes from. Boom, there you go. I'm sorry to say it, but Star Citizen needs a World War II flight sim with space in mind.
That's the way he described it initially. He said World War II in space. That's what That's how he described it.
And it's the farthest thing from it.
Oh, that reminds me, you're talking about the strafing issue. I'll do the topic before we wrap this up. The new stats came out on ships, and in Arena Commander forum, there's actually a debate.
And strafing is up by 200%. No, actually not.
No. In fact, the full forum post is called "Why Has CIG Killed Strafing?" And so basically, what's happened is they've noticed that they've massively nerfed strafing in the game, and only two ships that haven't really felt it is the Saber and the Kar-2-All. And the Kar-2-All makes sense in particular because the engines are just thrusters, and that would be probably, in my opinion,
very very big thrusters.
Yeah, so that's the only ship, in my opinion, that really would be able to handle that as well. The Saber,
the Cutlass shouldn't be as affected as badly because it's got those little spinny, circly guys on the outside of the body.
Like
but, they're not the main engines.
Yeah, but they're big thrusters, like that. And so the thing is, so basically, yeah, looks like that CIG is moving away from strafe combat, if this is the trend they're going for, and I can only give two massive thumbs up on that, because strafing is an FPS mechanic, and the G-forces on the human body, lateral is not healthy. Continual lateral left right, well, that causes all sorts of problems physiologically, and it should be back towards what Chris Roberts has also talked about multiple times: pitch and roll. This is important on a physiological basis with human bodies, G-force tolerances, and that even if
it's all about that realism.
Even if they've doubled it in the future, and when they're talking about talking about modeling the oxygen levels in the bloodstream, I think they're going to be shooting for this kind of realism for physiology. So here's hoping that they continue to develop the flight model in a pitch and roll basis, because that's going to lead to a lot more depth in combat, and we'll have to see what happens here. But as I said, we're not going to see any major changes until they actually get that pipeline in check and ships start flying with actual physics incorporated, as opposed to being XML files. And man, this just goes on. I just remembered something else. They're talking about the hit points of ships. Actually, we had talked about.
Aren't we going on about 40 minutes now? We need to wrap it up.
I know. Last thing, hit points of ships. They Calix said pretty much announced that the hit points of ships currently are listed are just arbitrary values. They just threw numbers in, and that they're going to be looking at materials, mass, and the size of the hull to determine the hit points. But we talked about this a while ago in a BlastCast about how they should do this. This is exactly what they're doing. So yes. So anyway, guys, yes, my encoder is probably going to explode, and we'll go ahead and I'll get you out a video as soon as I can about patch M with 2.4. And thanks for listening to this week's BlastCast. Sorry it was a little bit late, but Lightning needed to make some.
And a little bit long.
And a little bit long. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week.
Bye-bye.
Greetings, citizens. This is Jarvis. I wanted to give you an update on the 2.4 PTU and kind of give you my thoughts on what the status is. Here's one of the bugs you see that's kind of common right now.